Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk and dupe the Glaminatrix Cosmetics, the newest edition palette, which is called the Nocturnal Palette. I really want to post this before the palette launches. Let's see how it rolls. So the purpose of this video is to dupe the shades that is there in the Glaminatrix Nocturnal Palette with the shades that I have in my collection. Now, this won't be like one palette duping all the shades, so definitely keep that in mind. My purpose of the video is if you are eyeing like specific shades out of the palette, and if you do have these palettes that I'm going to talk about, you basically can dupe these shades. I have basically the entire palette duped. I will show you the swatches, everything in the close-up, in the outside lighting, everything. And after we dupe all the shades, and then we are going to do 2 looks using this palette. So without further ado, let's begin. Now let me give you a little bit of info about the Glaminatrix Cosmetics. Now this is an Australian brand. So basically if you are anywhere outside Australia, you would have to pay the shipping cost. And the palette itself would be $54 US or 75 Australian dollars. And this is going to be launched on February 13th, 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So definitely do keep that in mind. This palette has 12 shades, beautiful color story, which like absolutely captured my attention, and I was there that I'm going to buy this palette for sure. But before buying, I always like to see if I have those shades in my collection or not, and that is why this dupe video came into action. So let's start duping. The first shade in the palette is called Milky Way, and this is being duped by the Break the Rules palette from It's Belle Cosmetics, and the shade is called Stay Radical. If you've not seen the video, I'll link it in the iCards above. I've actually used this palette and reviewed this palette, and I've done like 2 looks using this palette. I absolutely love that shade called Stay Radical. So I'm gonna swatch it. It's a beautiful duochrome, which is like a peach with a green flip. I'm pretty sure you can see it, and that is what the Milky Way shade stands for in the Nocturnal Palette. The Glaminatrix Nocturnal Palette is basically a lot of like beautiful mattes and like duochromes. That's what the whole palette is all about. So if you do have, spoiler alert, if you do have It's Belle's Break the Rules palette as well as the Flare Collection Remix palette, even if you have the third palette, I think you definitely have all the shimmer shades already in your collection. So let's move on. Now the second shade in the palette is called Obscurity, and this is basically the very berry shade of this palette, and this is being duped by the shade called Delish from the Blueberry Muffin palette. I think they're going with the flow of the year and the era, and they definitely wanted to capture the very berry shade, and that's why they did this. And I feel like those 2 shades together would be absolutely beautiful. And even with the rest of the mattes that are gonna come in future, you can see like how beautiful those shades blend together. And yeah, I love this shade. The next shade of the palette is called Night Vision, and this is a beautiful duochrome which like shifts from a green to a brown, I would say. So as you can see, it's been duped by this shade, which is called Not Listening from Break the Rules palette. I hope you can see that shift. Let's swatch it so that you can actually see it. So this is the shade Not Listening from the Break the Rules palette. And I would say Break the Rules palette's shimmers are very shiny, very shifty. So as you can see, that's the Not Listening shade from the Break the Rules palette, which dupes the shade called Night Vision from the Glaminatrix Nocturnal Palette. I hope you can see that duochrome and the shift also. Beautiful. Oh my God. The color story, it's stunning. The next shade in the palette is called Murky, which is like a beautiful, I would say, it's not an olive green. It's basically this green. I don't know how to explain this, but this is duped by the shade called Green Olive from the Dirty Martini palette. Like, this is my green palette. I do not have a lot of green palettes in my collection, but if you do have this shade of green, I mean, this is exactly what that shade is. So let's swatch. And this is called Green Olive, which dupes the shade Murky from the Nocturnal Palette. It'll go so beautifully with that Not Listening shade. Oh my God, it's stunning. It is absolutely stunning. Okay, so the next shade is called Witching Hour, which is like that deep, this is the deepest shade of that palette. And this is being duped by this shade, which is called Decadent from the palette. And it's a beautiful, I would say, burgundy brown shade. It has a little bit of purple also in it. So I thought that this blueberry muffin palette can definitely go that deep, and I definitely wanted to include this shade. But also, I would also say if you do have the Giant Wolves palette from Odin's Eye, the shade that's called Howling is also like dead on dupe to that shade. I'm going to give you all the options so that you are aware, and even if you have like one of these palettes, you are going to get the similar look. Also, if you have the Subculture palette, the shade which is called a Rowdy from the palette, that is also very, very similar to that shade. So let's swatch the Decadent shade. Like such a beautiful burgundy brown. Definitely a must have for this palette, I would say. And this would tie in so many mattes and the shimmers together. Beautiful. I don't know if you guys can see that burgundiness or not, but it definitely has that burgundy brown shade. I'll give you a close up in the outside lighting so that you can see all the dimension and the shades very clearly. Okay, the next shade in the palette is called Dusk. Now this is a beautiful duochrome with that purpley burgundiness, like that shift on it. I mean, this is stunning, absolutely breathtaking shade of the palette. And this I have duped with the shade called Scorched from Pretty Sphere of Face. This is the only single shadow that I'm using. But also I want to mention that if you do have AEST Cosmetics, the latest palette that they released for like the Halloween season, what's that called? What fall? Dawn of Fall palette. They have a very, very similar duochrome in that. And I think, yeah, you can definitely achieve that with that shade also. But if you do have Scorched with you from Pretty Sphere of Face, I mean, look at that shade. You can definitely dupe the shade, which is called Dusk from the Nocturnal palette. Look at the duochrome, like that purple to green gold shift. Oh my god, stunning. I have done a dedicated video like swatching all my Pretty Sphere of Face eyeshadows. So if you do want to check it, I'll leave it in the eye cards above for you guys. The next shade in the palette is called Luna, and this is a beautiful blue to a purple shifting shade. And this I have duped from the AEST Cosmetics Flare palette, and this is the shade that I'm duping it with, and which is called Larimar. So as you can see, it is a blue to a purple shifting shade. I hope you can see that. So let's swatch it. I have like two favorites from this palette, and both of those shades are in the Glaminatrix palette. So I'm very happy of their choices, but I do have those shades. And this is the shade Larimar. Oh my god, can you see that? I hope you can see that shift. Let me get a mirror. Can you see that shift? Oh my god, it's beautiful. It's a purple to a blue shift. Stunning, absolutely stunning. Okay, the next shade in the palette is called Nightfall. Now, if you do have the AB8 Subculture palette, the shade which is called Axis, this blue shade, is very, very similar to that. Or if you do have the Glamlight's Dirty Martini palette, if you mix these two shades, which is classic, and mix it up, you would get a very, very similar shade. So let's swatch it. I'm going to do the mixing method of the Glamlight palette. So I'm just going to take this and this together, and we're going to get a similar shade. Look at that. Oh my god. I have no words for this color story. Yeah, love it. That and that burgundy together. Oh my god, that'll be stunning. Beautiful. And even with this shade, the Stay Radical shade, it'll be beautiful. The next shade in the palette is called Fog, which is being duped by the shade called Edge from the Subculture palette. And this is a beautiful mustard yellow shade, I would say. It's basically like my skin tone shade, so I don't know. It's just a little more yellow, but you can definitely achieve it. I'm going to use this on my eyes today for sure so that you guys can see. But I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. It's a very beautiful mustard yellow shade. Okay, the next shade in the palette is called Constellation, and this is such a beautiful, I would say like a warm tone bronze to like a pink shifting shade, and this has been duped by Flare Collection Remix palette from It's Well Cosmetics, and this is the shade that I'm duping it with, and this is called Citrine. So as you can see, it definitely has that beautiful like warm tone bronze to a pink shift. Oh my god, this is another shade that is like my favorite out of this palette. Oh my god, Larimar and that citrine shade, it's stunning. So let's swatch it. Oh my god, beautiful. I think you guys can see a lot more pink, and I can see a lot more like that warm tone bronze shade. My goodness, it's stunning. Stunning. Love it. Absolutely love it. 2 more shadows left, so let's move on. The next shadow, it is called Gloom, and this is a beautiful, I would say, murky green shade. Again, you can achieve it very similar green look from the Dirty Martini palette, but I think the dead on dupe is Antipode from the Giant Wolves palette from Odin's Eye. The next 2 shades are from this palette. It'll be Antipode for the shade Gloom and Shadow for the shade Annihilation, I think. But yeah, it is this murky green and that black. So let's swatch it. So this shadow is duping the shade Gloom. And Annihilation would be duping the shade Shadow. Oh my god. And that's how the entire Nocturnal palette is gonna look like if you do have these shades in your collection. Oh my god, look at the color story. Oh my god, I cannot be mad at this at all. And those were my dupes for the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette. Now let's move on to the 2 looks that I created using these dupes. And those were my two looks that I created using the dupes for the Nocturnal palette. I really hope that you guys enjoyed both these looks. I went with like more of like a murky green, more earthy tones on this side, and I went like party on the other side. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed both these looks. If you did like it, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Mondays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.